we are now going to move on to our next speaker. And Alhamdulillah, the speaker we now have is none other than Declan Henry. He's a great author, a great researcher, and also a journalist. And once it comes to the Ahmadi religion, he has been studying the books of the Qadiani religion for over 5 years. And inshallah ta'ala, very soon, in this regard, he will be publishing his own book. And this book, I will mention now, inshallah ta'ala, will truly be a game changer. Once it comes to more information regarding this book, inshallah ta'ala, Declan Henry himself will introduce it and what the contents will be. So now we respectfully request Declan Henry, inshallah ta'ala, to address the gathering and benefit us all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here with you today to speak to you about my forthcoming book on former Ahmadiyas and the reasons behind me writing it. Now, my project began with curiosity and a genuine willingness to understand the community I had previously viewed in a positive light. My earlier encounters with Ahmadiyas were warm and friendly, and for a time I accepted the public image they presented. I wrote kindly about them in several of my books, and I praised them in interviews. I attended their Jalsa Salana twice. I visited their places of worship. I shared meals with members, and I enjoyed their company. I travelled to Lahore, where I spent time with the Lahori Ahmadiyya movement. I even stood in a room where Mirza Ghulam Ahmad died, and in the ruins of an old mosque nearby where he once prayed. I wrote sympathetically about the persecution Ahmadiyyas sometimes face in Pakistan, because I believe injustice deserves to be acknowledged wherever it occurs. Now, that was before I became aware of some of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's controversial writings that had not been made visible to me earlier. I was genuinely shocked by the vile statements he made about Jesus and Miriam. Statements that were not only historically baseless, but deeply disrespectful to figures held sacred by both Christians and Muslims. I had never before encountered anything like this in mainstream Islamic thought, or indeed anywhere else. It was a moment when the ground shifted beneath my feet, because it revealed a side of the movement that had never been visible to me in my earlier positive interactions with them. It made me realize that the public image and the internal reality were not the same. That discovery was unsettling enough, but it was only the beginning. Once I stepped beyond the polished public image and began listening to those who had lived inside the movement and had left, a far more troubling picture emerged. What began as quiet, private listening soon became a much larger undertaking, a sustained 18-month project in which I gathered the testimonies of 33 former Ahmadiyyas who ranged in age from 18 to 82. These included ordinary members, people who had held positions of trust, and even individuals who had descended from the companions of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad himself. Their backgrounds varied, yet their accounts aligned with remarkable consistency. One of the most disturbing themes that emerged was the level of hostility some former members described within the movement towards mainstream Muslims. Several interviewees spoke about a deep, visceral distrust that shaped their upbringing and their understanding of the wider Muslim community. Now, this shocked me, particularly given the movement's public motto, love for all, hatred for none. What they described was a private emotional climate that stood in stark contrast to the public messaging. Their accounts made it clear that for many of them, negative attitudes towards Muslims were not incidental, but woven into their lived experience inside the movement. Another strong theme was the internal persecution that takes place within the community itself. Now, I had previously written about the external persecution Ahmadiyas face, but I had never heard about the pressure, fear, and emotional control that former members experienced from the movement's leadership, their families, and their peers. People spoke to me about the three faces of the movement: the polished public face, the strict internal face, and the theological face that most members never fully see. They described contradictions, failed prophecies, and a culture where questioning was widely discouraged. I listened to stories about the incredible bravery of those who left this movement after concluding that its theology was misleading, and then having to face hostility, abandonment, isolation, intimidation, betrayal, and outright ostracization from the very parents, siblings, friends, and community leaders they once trusted. Many told me that the vast majority of Ahmadiyas have never read the written works of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. They said only selected extracts are circulated, and that serious study often leads to doubt. Several interviewees use the same phrase: after anybody reads the books of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad properly, they leave. For me, that raised serious questions about how well the movement's theology withstands close examination. 30 of the 33 people I interviewed for my book had converted to Sunni Islam. They did so after periods of confusion, private study, and emotional turmoil. Leaving Ahmadiyism often meant losing family, community, and the only religious world that they had ever known. Several described it as stepping out of one life and into another, with no guarantee of acceptance on either side. They carried wounds that were not visible from the outside: guilt, isolation, fear, and trauma. There is a silence around the lived experiences of former Ahmadiyas, a silence that serves no one. All the existing podcasts and live streams about the Ahmadiyya movement mainly deal with the writings of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, and therefore concentrate on the movement's theology and polemics. None of this captures the human reality of what it means to leave a movement that has shaped a person's identity from childhood. None of it gives space to the voices of those who stepped away and have often found themselves standing alone. And that is why I am so pleased that I have written this book, the first of its kind. My intention was to create that space, allowing former members to speak out and share their experiences. I wanted to document their stories with dignity, clarity, and respect. I wanted Sunni Muslims to understand what former Ahmadiyas carry with them when they arrive in their mosques. Not to provoke division, but to foster compassion. Because these individuals were raised to distrust Sunni Muslims. Yet they found the courage not only to leave Ahmadiyism, but to embrace Sunni Islam. That journey deserves respect and recognition. I wrote this book because former Ahmadiyas deserved to be heard. They are not seeking attention. They are ordinary believers trying to live their faith with integrity. And many have paid a very heavy price for asking questions and leaving the movement. I wrote this book so that Ahmadiyas themselves could read the suffering inflicted on their own people by their own people. I repeat, on their own people by their own people. Parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends, to see and understand the emotional and spiritual suffering that the movement inflicted upon them after they decided to leave. There can never be any justification for this suffering from a movement that allegedly promotes peace and unity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk a little bit about converts to Ahmadiyism and the movement's membership figures. Let me tell you about recent research. Some recent research in America that has been carried out within the last 2 years has shown that in high-control religious groups and cults, there is a clear trend. Most new members who join them leave within the first 5 years. People often join during periods of vulnerability or hope, but early enthusiasm rarely lasts. Short-term membership is the norm and not the exception. And we see this very trend in the Ahmadiyya movement itself. Despite the large membership figures it sometimes announces, most converts do not stay. Whether the movement claims to have 200 million followers or claims that 40 million converted in a single day, which both of these claims it has made, or if you look at this year's figures that they have recently published, 276,596 have allegedly joined over the last year. I'm afraid the reality is that new converts rarely remain beyond 5 years. Now, many of these alleged mass conversions that occur in Ahmadiyya, in the Ahmadiyya movement, it occurs in places such as West Africa, often after a clinic or a school is built. But please remember that a one-time pledge does not necessarily lead to long-term belief, because joining is easy, staying is much harder. In fact, it's much rarer. Then there is the issue of cultural Ahmadiyya. And I speak quite a lot about this actually in my book, just a little bit today. Because of the social pressure, family tensions, and fear of being shunned, and it is a real fear, many who lose faith never formally resign. Instead, they quietly withdraw from Jamaat life, and they become what researchers call ghost members. They remain on the books, but no longer believe in Ahmadiyya theology or Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that the Ahmadiyya movement remains a small religious community of well under 1 million members worldwide. Its long-term stability relies far more on birth rates than on the retention of converts. While it has centres and places of worship across the globe, buildings do not equal believers, and property ownership does not equal growth. In conclusion today, the claim that the Ahmadiyya movement is the fastest growing religion on earth is simply not supported by the evidence. When the statistics are examined closely, it becomes clear that the movement is not on the verge of global expansion, and it is not operating on the same scale as the world's major religions. Now that's all I've got to say for today, but I would like to tell you all that my book, Breaking the Silence, 33 voices of former Ahmadiyas will be published in due course. And I will be announcing the publication date very, very shortly. I would just like to add this very last crucial point. It is a non-profit book. All royalties from this book will be donated directly to an Islamic charity for humanitarian aid in Gaza. I will not receive it. I will not receive a penny because I do not want to benefit financially for people who have genuinely, really, really suffered. For those 18 months, I listened to, I had people cry. They were so distressed, so traumatized, and they trusted me to tell their stories. And at times it was, it really, really was very humbling. It was it certainly has been one of the most remarkable books that I've written in the sense that, I've written so many books. I think I've published about 13 books, and I'm writing another one at the moment on a completely separate topic. But and I've interviewed hundreds of people because my books are documentary style books. In the course of my life, I've interviewed hundreds, probably thousands of people at this stage. But this one will certainly remain in my mind for a very long time. I suppose for a long time I had to get over that sadness because I had known the Ahmadiyya, a lot of Ahmadiyyas in such a positive light, but for that to change, and it had to change because, when I discovered what they had said about, or what Mirza Ghulam Ahmad had said about Jesus and Maryam, there was no turning back. I'm afraid I can't be friends, I can't support a movement that has that theology. So, but there's so much more in the book. That's really only a little bit of the tip of the iceberg that I've given you today, and there'll be lots more information as we in the weeks and months. Okay, thank you very much.
MashaAllah. That was an introduction for the forthcoming book by the author himself, and it definitely opened my eyes, and many hidden realities hopefully will come to the eyes of the public through this book, and many misconceptions that are circulated, especially with regards to the growth of the Qadiani religion, and various other aspects will become well known amongst the masses. Next, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to be taking a live call, and this will relate to a personal statement from Izhar Bhai, who is from Scotland. He is professionally a medical consultant, and at the same time he does frequent, like Adnan Bhai mentioned, to his streams, etc., in which debates and discussions do take place. So we'll now take him on call, and inshallah ta'ala, he will express his thoughts to ourselves. Izhar Bhai from Scotland.
Assalamu alaikum, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Assalamu alaikum, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and dear Declan. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to join you. I'm sorry I can't join you physically, but spiritually I am with you. I will just take a few minutes, and I'd like to thank all the organizers, first of all, because this is a seminal occasion, because it's, as far as I can remember, the first such event where those people who have left Ahmadiyat. I don't like using the word ex-Ahmadi because Ahmad is also the name of our Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.